So as you're gathering string for this, what turned out to be a stellar narrative, storytelling narrative of in March of what happened, why it happened, who did what to whom. Nick, you mentioned the document search. That was obviously critical. Also, you're looking for the killer anecdotes and such. Is somebody particularly helpful in providing the behind the scenes detail?
Yeah, I mean, several people, because these anecdotes always have to be checked. So, yeah, several people are starting to provide behind the scene details, and you know, I think also because people were nervous at the beginning about speaking because they're worried that maybe they don't have all the pieces. They maybe don't have an understanding of everything that's gone on. I think when you get to February, March, people are like, okay, well, you know, I understand what's happened now. And so I'm more willing to take a risk and to speak to reporters and to tell them what I think happened and to show them, you know, proof that that's the way it did indeed happen. So yeah, some people are particularly helpful. Obviously, there are also sources that now we've developed for 2-3 months that we've spoken to, that trust us, that can see that we're people who keep our words, that we respect our agreements. And so they open up a little bit more. So yeah, I mean, yeah, but the anecdotes again, I mean, you have to stand them up. I mean, you have to be comfortable that they're true and that they happen exactly as you reported them. And that was not always easy.
Especially in this case where it was a dinner between two people and we had to try to stand it up. You know, that's not the easiest thing to do.
No.
Yeah, that's true. That took some standing up, that anecdote, actually.
So I'm going to press you two for a moment and dodge as necessary, but I'm sure you're trying to reach the principals in this drama, including Ghosn, repeatedly in order to verify or derive some of these stories. Are you having instead to rely on people below that level, or were you successful at some point in breaking through to the big boys?
It depends on your definition of big boys. I mean, Ghosn obviously when he was in jail was extremely hard to reach. Obviously, I mean I read somewhere that something that the New York Times reporters did, which I think was actually very clever, was to send. I think they sent like stamped envelopes with letters so that Ghosn could write to them from jail. And I think, from what I read, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but from what I read, that those envelopes and that paper was sent back to them by the jail. So, I mean, people were going through great lengths to try and get to Carlos Ghosn. But
we sent him a gift basket with a couple copies of the Wall Street Journal, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So,
like his room at the Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think people was, I mean, when Ghosn was in jail, it was impossible to reach him. I think that's
your stories source reaction to people close to Ghosn. Any elaboration you can provide on what that means?
I can't remember exactly what that refers to, but I would imagine I would probably take a pass on it. But I can't remember exactly what part of the story, because I don't have the story in front of me.
Okay. Are you able to say whether you were able to reach Ghosn himself during these first months of 6 months?
While he was in jail, we couldn't reach him. No.
While he was in jail, I showed up at 4:30 in the morning outside the jail to line up with about 30 other journalists to put in a visitor request, and none of us got the request fulfilled. So I can safely say that he met 2 journalists while he was in jail, and that was 2 French outlets because he was trying to send a message to the French government. But other than that, he did not talk to the press.
I think he might have met 1 Japanese outlet as well.
Yes, he did. He met 1 Japanese outlet. So AFP, Les Echo, and then 1 Japanese outlet. Yeah.
These were visits that I think were, you know, they were 10 minutes through plexiglass with an interpreter present.
And a cop behind him.
With a cop behind him, and this wasn't until you know, sometime in January. So and he was obviously arrested in November. So yeah, in the early days, it was just impossible to hear from Ghosn.
Sean, I'll ask you on this one. The nature of the confinement and the restrictions put on Ghosn during this time, and there were repeated new charges filed against him, which was a reason to prolong the confinement. Do you think that was unusual even by Japanese standards?
Actually, you know what? Like, the one thing that's unusual about this case in Japan is how long it's taken to come to trial. Everything other than that has been pretty standard operating procedure here. So what the prosecutors do, actually, I should explain, like, the curious thing about this particular case in Japan's legal system is that Carlos Ghosn was never arrested by police. So the arrest, the investigation, the subsequent charges, and the conduct of the trial are all conducted by the prosecutor's office. So the prosecutors tend to arrest somebody, and then the majority of their gathering of evidence for the trial is done through interrogation in jail, right? So Carlos Ghosn was interrogated by prosecutors without a defense attorney present, because you're not allowed to have your defense attorney present during interrogations with prosecutors here in Japan. Every day, 7 days a week, sometimes for 4, 5, 6 hours at a time. Sometimes early in the morning, sometimes late at night at the jail. And the same thing happened to Greg Kelly as co-defendant, and the same thing happens to most Japanese defendants. And what they tend to do, and the reason why I think Greg Kelly was arrested in this case, is they grab the main guy, and then they grab the guy just below him, his assistant. And Greg Kelly sort of fits that role here. And they try to get the assistant to sort of say, yeah, what I did was wrong, but he told me to do it, right? They try to get them to point the finger. So there's not a whole lot of wiretapping, as you see in the US, and there's not a whole lot of digital evidence gathering. A lot of it is criminal prosecutions here in Japan tend to rely on oral testimony to prosecutors in jail. And Carlos Ghosn has been a harsh critic of that system ever since, but he's not alone. There's quite a few people in Japan who feel the same way, that the system by prosecutors, where you're stuck in jail and you can't leave, and you can make it all end if you just said, I did something wrong. That's why they call it the hostage justice system, among Japan's critics. It's this idea that they hold you until you admit to wrongdoing. So yeah, it is harsh, but it wasn't unusual in Carlos Ghosn's case.
It's kind of a Napoleonic code, if I could use the French reference there, of justice in Japan.